Hello, scholars. It's me here again. We have now reached the end of another topic, which is World War II. I have provided you with some ed puzzle videos about World War II, three of them, to give you some information about what happened, the causes, and what happened in World War II. And I want to wrap it up with this little review. And at the end of the review, there's going to be a Kahoot game, a Kahoot challenge, actually, that is basically student paced. So you'll be able to play it. It's a challenge. So you will be competing against other players, but you'll be doing it on your own. And after you've completed the Kahoot game in the end, you will see that your scores will be tallied. I'm definitely going to have a prize for the top five in the Kahoot challenge. You just have to wait for the end to find out what the prizes are. But but for our purposes right now, let's just go ahead and get started with this review. I want to kind of get in here and do it quickly and not take a lot of time with it. I'm sure you've learned a lot. So in this review, basically, we're going to look at World War II, and I'm going to try to sum it up, summarize it. First, we're going to look at here. Let's take a look at who was fighting. We're going to look at why they were fighting. We're going to discuss who got hurt in the fight. We're going to talk about who helped them fight. Also, who had significant roles in the fight, how the war was won, and we'll finish up when it ended and the ultimate outcome of it. So, yeah, let's go ahead on and get started here with our little presentation for World War II review. So, who is fighting? During World War II, which lasted from 1939 to 1945, this war was fought between the Allied powers and the Axis powers. You are familiar with those two sides from World War One. Also, side note, everything that you see bold and underlined, please take a little sheet of paper and jot down some notes because it's going to help you be more efficient when you take the Kahoot challenge in the end. So let's look at the two sides, who the leaders were. In the Axis powers, there was Adolf Hitler, who was the leader of Germany. Benito Mussolini was the leader of Italy. And Emperor Hirohito was the leader of Japan. Now, the Allied powers was made up of the United States, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, better known as FDR. He was the president at the beginning of the war. Though when he died in office, his vice president, Harry Truman, became the president and remained in office for the rest of the war. Now, Winston Churchill was the leader in Great Britain. Joseph Stalin was the leader of the Soviet Union, and Charles de Gaulle of France. Why were they fighting? World War One was the biggest cause of World War Two. Yep. Remember the Treaty of Versailles? It was the peace agreement to end World War One, where Germany got blamed for everything and then lost everything. Well, as you can probably imagine, the German people were very unhappy with the way things turned out. Many historians believe it was because of these hostile feelings toward the world that fascism took hold in Germany. Now, what is fascism? Fascism is a political philosophy, a movement or regime, such as that of the Nazi Party in Germany, that praises the nation and often race, white race, above the individual, and and that stands for a centralized autocratic government headed by a dictator, severe economic and social restrictions, and forcible suppression of opposition. What does any of that mean? That means in a fascist government, the people are led by a dictator who does not allow them to disagree with him or stand in opposition to any of his policies. Also, boom, main cause World War II, militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. So if you're thinking World War II is basically part of World War I, you are correct. got a little quote down there you all may remember from when we started at the beginning of the year. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. You can see here uh, how that works out, right? Just looking at the world wars. So let's keep it moving. Who got hurt? Now, World War One was a total war. It is estimated that 24 million soldiers died fighting the war, and 34 million civilians died either directly or indirectly as a result of the war. 6 million Jews were systematically murdered, known as the Holocaust, in Nazi concentration camps in Germany and Poland. Millions of Japanese civilians were killed when the US dropped two atomic bombs, the first time nuclear weapons were ever used on human beings, on the islands of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. 120,000 Japanese Americans were forced to leave their homes, businesses, jobs, and communities to live in internment camps, which was America's version of concentration camps. All right, moving right along. Who helped them fight? Well, at first, America claimed itself to be neutral, but was actually providing all sorts of aids besides troops to the Allies. Americans wanted to maintain a policy of isolationism, which is a policy of remaining apart from the affairs or interests of other groups, which they believed would keep them out of world wars. Now, however, the Japanese attack on the Pearl Harbor Naval Base in Hawaii on December 7th, 1941, brought the U.S. into full combat against the Axis powers. Americans at home showed their support for the war by rationing food and supplies, collecting scrap metal, buying war bonds, and planting victory gardens so the country could focus on feeding and caring for our troops, making sure they had weapons and ammo. World War II also brought an end to the Great Depression in the United States. That was one of the ways that the World War II had an impact on the U.S., bringing an end to the Great Depression, basically because Americans were so busy ratcheting up. The government was so busy ratcheting up the economy for war production, put Americans back to work. Keep it moving. Now, who had significant roles in the fight? Well, we have the Tuskegee Airmen. The Tuskegee Airmen were the first African American fighter pilots in the U.S. Army Air Force. The Navajo Code Talkers were Native American soldiers who created a secret code that the Japanese could not understand. And women went to work in factories manufacturing war goods and replacing the men who had gone off to fight the war in Europe. Rosie the Riveter, shown right here, was a symbol of their strength and determination. So basically, right, when we talk about the World War II being a total war, even those folks who were not literally on the front lines, like women, they were home working and working towards making a positive contribution to the war effort. Now, the Navajo Code Talkers, brilliant, brilliant guys. The Japanese soldiers were very good at intercepting uh, transmittance between the Allied powers. So they would always know what was happening and were able to thwart the Allies in so many battles, which helped them win so many victories in the early parts of the war. But these Native American soldiers, the Navajo Code Talkers, came up with this secret code that the Allies were now able to communicate with each other without Japan knowing what they were saying and thwarting their battle strategies. Of course, the Tuskegee Airmen. This you've probably heard about them. They were the first African American fighter pilots to be deployed in war, and they were victorious, although they were not allowed to fight alongside um, white soldiers. The country still very racist at the time and segregating our servicemen and women. But in the end, the Tuskegee Airmen proved that they were more than capable at fighting and were able to win numerous awards for valor and bravery. Moving on. How was the war won? Because World War II was a total war. It took everybody to stop it. You can call it a win, but in total war, everybody ultimately loses. However, there were some important battles that changed the tide of the war and allowed the Allies to be victorious. The event that triggered the war was when Germany invaded Poland. And for a while, it seemed that the Axis powers would end up ruling all of Europe and Southeast Asia. The Battle of Stalingrad, there though, and from 1942 to 1943, for those few months, was the turning point for Eastern Europe, which allowed the Soviet Union to be liberated from German control. Then there was the Battle of Midway in the Pacific in June 1942, which weakened the Japanese threat in the Pacific, which would go on to allow the Marines to capture the islands of Iwo Jima in 1945 and raise the U.S. flag, which was that very beautiful picture you saw in the first slide. That's the memorial. Now, let's then look at when did it end and what was the outcome. So, the Battle of Normandy, which lasted from June 1944 to August 1944, resulted in the Allied liberation of Western Europe from Nazi Germany's control. We see, and first, the Eastern Europe, the Soviets were liberated, and then here in Western Europe, Great Britain and France are liberated. The battle began on June 6, 1944, and is also known as D Day, that day, June 6, 1944. On May 8th, 1945, the Allies formally accepted the unconditional surrender of Nazi Germany. Hitler had committed suicide a week earlier on April 30th. Hmm. At the end of the war, Germany was occupied by the Allied powers of Great Britain, France, the United States, and the Soviet Union. Well, that brings our little review to an end. And you'll see there that at the bottom of the slide, there is a link for you to click on and to play the Kahoot challenge that I've provided for you. Now, I'm going to put this presentation I'm going to put this presentation in the materials section of the, actually, I think I'm going to put it in the assignment section of uh, our Google Classroom, but you will be able to see the slides. I'm going to just put the whole presentation, just the slide presentation in Google's inside of your Google Classroom, so that you can go to that last slide, click the link there, and play the Kahoot challenge. I'm looking forward to seeing how you guys rank up. I set the game up to be a challenge and very interesting and fun. I played it and had a really good time. So there are like 25 questions, and you get like 30 seconds to answer the questions. I gave you 30 seconds, so you have an opportunity to go back if you need to and look at the slides if you need to refresh your memory on anything. But of course, everything is being timed. So the quicker you give the right answer, is the higher you get up in the scoreboard or the leaderboard. Okay, so that ends my presentation for World War II, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I wish you a great day. Stay home, stay healthy, and stay busy completing these assignments. It's not too late. There will come a time when it will be, but right now it's not. So let me encourage you to get the work done. Okay? Don't hesitate to reach out to me if you need any help. All right? Take care, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.